In the land of Egypt, there is a river, and once upon a time, a woman put her son in that river to save his life. She wove a basket out of papyrus, and she made it watertight with bitumen and pitch, and then she put her son inside and set him into the water as his sister watched. Maybe you know this story, many people do, but if not, it's the story of Moses as told in the book of Exodus, which is part of the Bible. As UUs, we have a lot of different relationships to the Bible as a sacred text or not as one at all in the slightest. For some of us, it's completely irrelevant to our spiritual lives. For some of us, we associate it with harm and abuse and pain and isolation. And more of us still associate it, we hold it near and dear in our hearts as a holy text through which we might get a glimpse of the sacred. Some of us feel something else or a mixture of all these things, and I think we have such a beautiful tradition that we get to hold all of those things and more in one room. And as for me, as your brother and sister in Unitarian Universalism, I adore the Bible, and I hope that my love and dedication to this text as a primary aspect of my own spiritual life shines through today for y'all. Also, speaking as the intern minister at the Texas UU Justice Ministry, we do a lot of interfaith work for justice, and we found that whatever our individual beliefs and experiences, it is valuable for us to be open, understanding, and at least this much fluent in the spiritual language of justice that other faiths use. So even if this does not do anything for you individually, I invite you into a spiritual practice of curiosity this morning in the service of justice, asking yourself, I wonder what wisdom we might gain from this story about how our religious siblings within Unitarian Universalism and throughout the wider interfaith struggle for justice might understand the world. So, the story of Moses is about many things. It's a story about what we owe to who and why. It's a story about belonging and not belonging and belonging again. It's a story about home and where home really is, but perhaps most of all, and perhaps most famously, it is a story about freedom. When was the last time you felt free? Have you ever felt it, and would you know it if you did? As I ask myself that question, I hear Nina Simone in my head singing, I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. So maybe we don't even know what it is. But maybe you've caught a glimpse, and maybe that baby in the basket did too. Let me set the stage a little bit better. Whenever you tell a story from the Bible, you've got to give context and context and context and context. It's a big book. The book of Exodus tells it like this. Long ago in the land of Egypt, there was once a man named Joseph. He was a Hebrew man who lived in Egypt for a long time. Joseph gained the Pharaoh's trust by interpreting the Pharaoh's dreams, and Joseph became a powerful man in Egypt, ushering in a time of great prosperity. But after Joseph died, a new Pharaoh rose up, and he forgot all about Joseph. He no longer saw the Hebrew people as his countrymen, but rather as a dangerous foreign force living within Egypt. He despised and distrusted the Hebrew people, and so he ordered all Egyptians to treat them with cruelty. He also ordered the Hebrew midwives to kill any Hebrew boy that was born, but the brave midwives secretly refused. Of course, eventually the Pharaoh noticed all of these little alive baby Hebrew boys running around, and so he noticed something was wrong with his plan, and enraged, he demanded that the midwives explain themselves, and they did. They said, the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before we get there. I don't know what happened. So the Pharaoh, unfortunately, then ordered all of the Egyptians to kill any Hebrew baby boy that they found. This sounds awful to me, and it also sounds familiar. Those in power slicing up the population into good and bad, native and foreign, rightful owners of land and illegal criminal invaders, despite the fact that no one is illegal on stolen land. Many of our so-called leaders may not have literally called upon us to murder children, but they seek to destroy all the social supports that allow children to survive and thrive. When schools are defunded and parents do not make a living wage, and healthcare is unaffordable and food assistance programs are whittled down to nothing, and still we send our children to school with fear in our hearts for their safety from gun violence, how is our world so different from Pharaoh's? And when I think of children who are marginalized by poverty, racism, transphobia, and more, I see it even more clearly. Some children are being targeted more than others. I am a graduate of Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary, where there is an annual conference called Hesed. It's organized by students of color and highlights voices of color in interfaith justice work around the country and around the world. This is my plug for that. If that sounds at all interesting to you, it's an online component. It's usually in like February or March. It's really excellent, so that's my plug. But anyway, I highly recommend it. But in 2023, the Hesed keynote speaker was the Reverend Dr. Stephen Ray, who is the president of Chicago Theological Seminary and the president of the Society for the Study of Black Religion. In his 2023 Hesed keynote address, the Reverend Dr. Ray talked about why marginalized children are targeted by hate groups. And when I heard him talk about it, I felt like I understood the world so much more. He said that the hateful targeting of marginalized children has two interrelated effects. It teaches children that the adults around them cannot protect them, and it teaches adults that they cannot protect children. This shatters communities emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. I felt the reality of this deep in my bones, and as the Reverend Dr. Ray brought this illumination into my mind, he also brought grief to my heart. I thought of all the trans kids I've met throughout my life and how badly I wanted to protect them, how afraid I always am for them. I thought of people mocking trans kids at press conferences that I've been to and how I didn't know how to make them stop. I thought of all the trans kids trapped in abusive families and how trans adults have become painted as threatening interlopers in family lives. We can't get to each other. I can't protect them. And I thought of all the stories I've heard during the legislature this year, stories of trans kids and immigrant kids who are being especially targeted right now. And I imagined how this might have played out all across the world and all across time, and I wondered at the depth of pain created by this tactic. Children separated from parents in boarding schools, concentration camps, conversion therapy camps, plantations, factories, detention centers. More broadly even, we learn the same lesson again and again, watching others in our communities of any age being struck down with the violence of the powerful. And we learn, I cannot protect you, you cannot protect me. I see the world of the Pharaoh, here and now, not so far away in time or space. But I also see the midwives in this story all around me. I see people learning to protect their communities. I see people refusing to do the violence demanded of them. Maybe they tell a couple of cheeky lies to Pharaoh in the process. They gave birth too fast, we got there too late, I can't kill the babies. But if the long arm of the law comes to us, let us remember this story and then proceed to be even wiser than the wise midwives and practice the ancient and sacred, shut your mouth and call a lawyer. That would be my recommendation. This is the world of the Pharaoh. This is the world that baby Moses was born into. And can you believe we're this far in and we haven't really talked about Moses yet? We're getting there. I had to set the stage. I had to set the context. Long ago in the land of Egypt, a baby boy was born into that world, where the Pharaoh wanted him dead. And so his mother hid him for 3 months, his cries filling her with terror until she could hide him no longer. She wove together that basket and made it waterproof and sent her baby off in the river while his older sister kept an eagle-eyed watch on him the whole way. I don't know if the baby had a name yet. I don't think he did, but his sister's name was Miriam, and she grew up to be a prophet, and in fact, maybe she already was one in her own way. Just as the baby and the basket was flowing down the river, the daughter of the Pharaoh went into the river to bathe, where she discovered a baby inside of a basket. And as you might expect, he was crying, and as you might expect, she took pity on him, saying, he must be one of the Hebrews' children. Just then, brave little Miriam ran up to her, having been watching. And I always say this, and it never gets a laugh, and I always want it to, and I think I'm delivering it wrong. So she comes up to him, and what's funny is she says, oh, a little baby Hebrew boy, do you want a Hebrew nurse for him? And so helpfully, just like the midwives. And the Pharaoh's daughter says yes, and so Miriam takes Moses back to his own mother to raise him, where she no longer feared his crying at night. Perhaps Miriam studied under the midwives. She learned how to speak cleverly to power, but she also learned not to believe the lie of Pharaoh. She did not think, I cannot protect you, you cannot protect me. She believed, I can protect you. So she followed her brother and saved him. Her faith made her brave. So thanks to his sister, Moses got to grow up. The Egyptian world of the powerful saw him as the son of the Pharaoh's daughter, but her family knew the truth. He was their son. But the truth was complicated. He was given an Egyptian name by the Pharaoh's daughter, and he seems to have grown up ignorant of the suffering of his own people. He saw this suffering for the first time as an adult, and it was a great shock to him. He was overwhelmed by the pain and the indignity of it all. It happened like this. Moses ran across an Egyptian man beating a Hebrew man, and Moses murdered the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand. Once the Pharaoh discovered what Moses had done, Moses feared for his life, and he fled to a land called Midian. There in Midian, Moses met the priest of Midian, whose name was Jethro. And I'm always like, that's where that name comes from. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, have you not met a Jethro? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I always thought in Texas you met a Jethro. This doesn't matter. So he went to Midian, and he met the priest of Midian, Jethro, and married one of his daughters. And he had a son with this woman. And he lived in Midian for many years, where he tended to Jethro's sheep out in the wilderness. I don't know what Moses was feeling while he was out there in Midian. But I wonder what this was like. Faced with the overwhelming suffering of his own people, he murdered someone and then fled the country. I wonder what his childhood taught him. I wonder if he wasn't able to learn from the midwives like his sister Miriam did. Because he had to pretend to be an Egyptian? Because he couldn't live with the rest of his Hebrew family? I know that my transness draws me to certain metaphors, but they're the ones that I have. And I see in Moses the stories of many of us who have been severed from ourselves and from our people. I wonder if this childhood taught him fear and isolation. I wonder if it taught him to believe the lie of Pharaoh's violence. I cannot protect you. You cannot protect me. And I wonder if that's why he ran away and stayed away for so long. One day, long ago now in the land of Midian, Moses brought Jethro's flock beyond the wilderness to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, beyond the wilderness, far from any place he had ever called home, he saw a fire. Imagine you're a shepherd, charged with the care of your father-in-law's sheep. They go this way and that in search of food, in search of land. You keep them from predators and from dangerous cliffs. You have felt drawn towards a great mountain beyond the boundaries of any place you have ever traveled with these sheep before, perhaps much further than you've ever been in your entire life. Here, with these vulnerable animals who are under your care, far from familiar shelter, far from any person you know and without any way to contact them, far from home, you see a fire. No people. Will it blaze out of control? Will it destroy this wilderness? Will it eat the shrubs and the sheep and all the wildlife here in this mountain? Will it spread from plant to plant until there is nothing left on earth at all? In your fear, you stare at the fire, and you see it consumes nothing at all. It is flashing out from a bush, but the bush is not consumed. It remains. How strange. Moses felt he had to get a closer look. And as he turned his eyes towards the flame, the voice of God came out of the bush and shouted his name, Moses, Moses. And Moses replied, as countless prophets before and since have replied, here I am. And there in the land of Midian, in the wilderness beyond the wilderness, God spoke to Moses and sent him back to Egypt to free his people. Moses was scared, but God talked him through it. Finally, he caught up to his older sister who saved him all those years ago. Finally, his faith had made him brave. How did that happen? What changed? How did his faith finally make him brave? What did God tell him? I would really like to know. Well, good thing I read the Bible, and I'll tell you. When Moses felt scared and uncertain, God had to talk Moses through a lot of different fears, and God had answers to all of them because God is a know-it-all, but I guess you get to be when you're God. But I want to tell you the part of that conversation that I am most struck by in this moment right now. The midwives and Miriam knew how to speak. They were clever and effective. Moses was not. as you can tell, because he went for murder instead of a conversation. When God tells him to go back to his people and tell them all that God has told him, Moses says, "Oh, my Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor even now that you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." God tells him basically, don't worry about it. I make everybody talk anyway. That's what I do because I'm God, so I'll just make you talk good. How does that sound? Moses was not into it. He really insists. He says, "Oh, my Lord, please send someone else." I've been there. I feel that. And God does get mad at him for a second. I'm just a little bit skipping over the part where God gets mad at him. It's only for a couple of lines. God does get mad for a second. But then God says, "Okay, well, what of your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know that he can speak fluently. Even now, he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, his heart will be glad. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and I will teach you what you shall do." So, in his fear, Moses still believed he was alone. It made it impossible for him to do what he had to do, and God felt frustrated. But then God sent him another person. And this is how Moses learns to begin to disbelieve the lie of Pharaoh's world. This is how Moses begins to believe, I can protect you. You can protect me. This is how his faith finally made him brave. We have been living in a frightening world. The rot of injustice in our country runs deep, and in the past 6 months, we have seen an exhausting escalation of everything our faith tells us is wrong. Here's what I've seen. Friends moving out of state, people afraid to leave their homes, justice workers burning out and dropping out, loved ones getting sicker and sicker. I bet we've all got stories in this room about 2025. I'm scared and I'm exhausted, and I bet you are too. So get your rest where you can. Take your time alone when you need it. And when you find yourself running to Midian, running into the wilderness, running beyond the wilderness, take heart, for in that unknown land there is a fire which burns without consuming, a sacred chalice of love which shines in the darkness, a sparkling reminder of the interdependent web of all existence, of which you and I and all things are a part. It will remind you that you are not alone, that it is not too late, that you can learn from the midwives and learn from your sister, that your brother can speak for you if you cannot speak for yourself. It will remind you that the impossible may happen. A bush may burn without being damaged. A staff may become a snake in the hands of a prophet, and our people will be free. I can protect you. You can protect me. And here we are together, and we cannot help but be together. The nature of all existence makes us inseparable. By this faith, we will be brave. By this faith, we may do the sacred work of justice. For by this faith, when love itself calls us to that justice, we will be able to turn towards it and speak the words of all the prophets who are called by God to free the people. Here I am. May it be so. Thank you.